Good morning, a beautiful November morning, sun is shining, and we're going to talk about tree bark today. Maybe not an exciting topic for a lot of people, it is for me, but it's a really useful thing to learn if you're looking to identify trees, deciduous trees in the winter. And we'll start with one of my favorites. This is American Beech, and while most trees as they age get a thicker corky bark, American Beech does not. It stays this smooth gray color for its whole life. It always reminds me of an elephant's leg with that smooth gray bark. Get a little lichen growing on it, some nice green lichen here. And because it never gets that thicker corky bark, this is one of those trees that can really suffer around construction activity as things bang into it. It doesn't have that cushion to protect it, so it can really suffer some serious injuries in construction areas. But that's not a concern here out in the woods at the clearing. American Beech. Paper birch, also called white birch, although there are other species in the world of birch that are called white birch also that have white bark. It's also called canoe birch because this is the bark that Native Americans would use to line their canoes. Anyway, again, everybody knows it. It peels in these thin strips, which is tempting for people to peel off, of course. But it adds a lot of character and a lot of movement in the wind when it does that. And not all paper birch do it to the same degree. This is doing it very nicely. It has these horizontal markings, lines on it. Those are called lenticels. Those are the gas exchange organs on bark. And they're very prominent on paper birch. And it's very decay resistant. You'll often see a dead birch log laying in the woods and it looks like it's totally solid, but you step on it and it squishes. So the wood inside has decayed and has gotten punky, but the bark can stay intact for years just laying on the forest floor. And again, that decay resistance was why Native Americans would use it to line canoes, to keep the water out. They would make buckets out of it to keep the water in because it would not rot for many, many years. But we think of a birch bark canoe with the white bark facing out. Actually, it was reversed. It was the white bark was facing in, and the inner kind of amber colored bark was facing out. But again, everybody knows paper birch because of this nice pure white bark and how it shreds like this. This is wild black cherry, one of 3 native cherries in Door County. Wild black cherry, choke cherry, and pin cherry are the 3. Of course, the most famous cherry in Door County is the Montmorency tart cherry, which grows in orchards. Of course, not a native, but it's famous in Door County. This is wild black cherry, and I learned this back in my school days from my professor, Professor Ed Hasselkus, as the tree with potato chip bark. It peels off in these larger chips about the size of a potato chip, and there's no other tree around here that does this, so it's very noticeable. As a young tree, like other cherries, it's got this smooth, real glossy, reddish brown bark, really pretty. But as it grows up, it turns into this. So this is a wild black cherry with its potato chip bark. This is white ash. Like there are 3 native cherries in Door County, there are 3 native ash trees. White ash, green ash, and black ash. And if you see an ash tree in high ground, like at the clearing, it's always going to be of white ash. Green ash and black ash grow on wetter ground. But all ash, at least all ash that I know, as they get older, develop this classic bark pattern. It's often like a drawn-out diamond-shaped pattern. If you look at it closely enough, thick and corky, coarse, and sometimes you'll have a patch like we have right here, where that outer bark sloughs off. I think I read somewhere one time that that's a fungal disease that causes that to happen. It doesn't hurt the tree, just kind of looks odd. But as you look at bark enough, you'll eventually find that you can identify most trees, just most mature trees, just by their bark. And white ash is very distinctive. This is one of our two native pines in Door County. This is red pine, the other one is white pine, of course. And red pine gets this beautiful kind of mottled, patterned bark with age, with shades of brown and gray and reddish brown. It's a beautiful bark. And this is a two-needle pine. All pines have needles in bundles. There are two needle pines, 3 needle pines, and 5 needle pines. Red pine is a 2 needle pine and always in bundles of 2. And it's the only pine that I know of that when you bend it, it breaks. All the other ones just keep bending. That's one way you can tell it. But it really has this gorgeous bark on red pine. My dad always called it Norway pine.